When heritage brands lose their relevance in the market, some never rebuild it. In this episode, I'm joined by Nontokozo Madonsela, the Group Chief Marketing Officer of Momentum Metropolitan Holdings. She shares the 7-year-long journey of how they rebuilt their relevance in the market, created strong partnerships, and continually build a culture of challenger brand thinking, inclusive innovation, and consistently adding their voice on pertinent issues in society. This is The Lead Creative. Please hit share and subscribe. Welcome to the Lead Creative Podcast, where we talk to creative industry leaders, influencers, and brands. We discuss the strategies that influence brand thinking and shape industries. Thought leaders and heads of agencies let us in on some of their thinking and insights. I'm your host, Mongezi Mtati. Enjoy the show, and please share and subscribe. How do you believe your being a firstborn prepared you for the leadership roles that you took on in marketing and many other firsts that you then took on?
You know what? I often talk about being a firstborn in my family, not from a place of advantage, from a place of
Sure,
expectations.
sure.
But if I was to, I'm the firstborn of I've got 4 siblings and born to teachers. So for me, being firstborn means taking your responsibility seriously, charting your own way because your parents are figuring out what it means to raise a child through you, being aware of the expectation to not disappoint because you are setting a standard and an example for those that come behind you. No one ever tells you what it means to be an older sister or an older brother, but you are just getting shouted at for not looking after your siblings, who you believe must look after
Yeah,
themselves
yeah.
sometimes. In terms of how that's helped me in my profession, I think I take what I do seriously. I really, really do. And I haven't had the advantage of calling an older sibling to rescue me or bail me. So more often than not, I have to figure out how to get myself out of situations I've put myself in. And I'm happy to share. I believe in
Sure,
abundance. I've been sharing
sure,
all of my life.
sure.
I,
Yeah,
you know, a packet of chips says to go around five
yeah,
kids, and that's what it
yeah.
is.
No, that's fascinating. How do you think it prepared you for marketing though, and the and leading in your roles?
So I don't think it prepared me for
Sure.
marketing because even growing up, I didn't know that this is the profession I would want to pursue. And naturally, I've got to separate myself from being. There are many people who are born as elder
Sure.
siblings in their family structures, but are not in marketing. They are not, problem solvers. I'm just a person who loves to solve problems. I'm very curious. Like I said, I take every task I do very seriously. I allow myself to have fun. In terms of leadership, I think I've just done a podcast about being a servant
Sure.
leader and how to lead is to serve. And like I said, being the first of 5 children, that I've got to look back and make sure that everyone's lunches are made and everyone's school shoes were
Sure.
polished. And if there was one who didn't do their homework, I sometimes had to fake the handwriting, and so that parents would not, be upset with a sibling. I would have to get them out of their a terrible situation. So I think being resourceful, thinking on my feet, and I guess being a leader of a team, because if you are first and you are expected to lead, that's a leadership skill. So yeah, that's how it prepared me for my leadership, and I'm a lot more accepting, like I said, to the spaces to be shared.
Yeah.
There were days I hated my siblings because I thought, I would have more toys to play with. I would have more chocolate to myself. I would not get shouted at for them not, moisturizing their bodies or refusing to eat breakfast. I would get shouted at for what they're doing. So I guess it's just been, it's taught me, how to stand in the gap for
Sure.
others and how to kind of have the community around me and us, all of us looking out for each other type thing.
Absolutely. Brands have the ability to shape conversations and culture in very many ways. I've noticed that under your leadership, Momentum's marketing and communication has really been talking around, or at least built conversations around this area of success. What role do you think brands play in shaping society and actually shaping the conversations that we have as a society?
Yeah. I mean, there would be no brand if society didn't exist, right?
Absolutely.
Because that's who consumes these products and that's who buys into these services. For me, going into this world of success, we had to connect with the people we want to inspire and the people we want to encourage. Brands shape society, whether it's through film and storytelling or through passion point and activation of them or through any narrative that they want to fundamentally shift behavior around. That happens because of this exchange between brand and society, and with this constant dialogue between these two characters if you were to see each one as a
Absolutely.
character. For me, I talk about how we as marketers must be responsible for the stories we tell because we are shaping culture, and also in shaping culture, if you get it wrong, the outcome of your failure to get it right is you offending those who are owners or who are living the culture. So I think that relationship for me is quite important. In Momentum's She Owns Her Success, we've started a movement. We've started a movement that kind of has allowed us to just say to women, young and old, that your achievements don't speak for themselves, and many opportunities that will advance your progress require you to be able to speak for
Yeah.
yourself and require you to be able to own with confidence what you've accomplished. That ability sometimes, obviously, the absence of it is a consequence of one's context, one's upbringing, one's experience, one's failures, one's personalities, etc. And all we can do is to try and find things that are in common that we can have one conversation to more than one person about. And we find that psychologically is where it starts. Psychologically, what one believes about themselves is where it starts. And you've got to make a choice every day to go against how we've been
Sure.
raised. I say now to my aunts that when I see my nieces, or my cousins rather, being complimented for being quiet, I'm like, that's not a right character for one to
Yeah.
have. When they say it's alam senkosi, ooh, Nontokozo, akeve is alam senkosi, akahluphi umuntu.
Yes, yes, yes. You must own the space that
I'm
you're
like, I
in.
don't
Yeah.
want Isalamu
Yeah.
Senkosi. The Asilamu is Alam Senkosi. My God, is the worst
Yeah.
trait one can
Yeah.
have. I think what is good is that you are grounded. That's
Sure.
different. Being grounded is one thing. Being Isalamu Senkosi is another
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you don't, if women don't own their success and don't speak for themselves, that is where sometimes they'll be overlooked. That's where opportunities will miss them. That's when abuse happens, because if you're not able to speak up, it means sometimes you take abuse that you shouldn't
Yeah.
take.
Yeah.
You take unfair treatment that you shouldn't take. You accept and know that you could have questioned. And you allow people to almost sidestep you, even though your accomplishments are a lot more bigger or a lot more
Yeah.
impactful. So I think for me, that's where the shaping of society comes in. And we never do that naively, obviously,
Sure.
because it is what it being a woman is what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
And we've had years of history that have shaped our disposition and that informs our upbringing.
That work, that She Owns Her Success work, as well as the science of success in those two
of
pieces
success.
of work for me. I feel like Momentum has uniquely positioned itself within this sort of space of success, which is different from anything else that we are seeing, especially in the financial services and sort of insurance spaces. Why did you choose to redefine success? Like, what insights informed your wanting to redefine success as a brand?
Sure, sure. Um, that we always do like in-depth research and just scanning into trends before we do our massive strategies. And what we realized is that there has been often, because of social media, more, made more of a thing because of social
Yeah.
media is this thing of success in a materialistic way and this thing of communicating success by pointing out the components that are materialistic that you own. Okay, so yeah, I mean, you must have the car, you must drink the champagne, you must wear the jewelry, you must have the house and the right address or whatever to
Yeah.
show those are markers of success. For us, our opportunity was in saying there are things and components that are beneath that layer that are not often
Yeah.
addressed. And one of them being not everybody ever succeeds by accident.
Yes.
Success is
Yeah.
work. But often when we talk as brands on success, we come at the end stage of that journey you've had on, oh, here's your graduation. How many? I mean, God, financial services, everybody must. So success, he's graduated.
Yeah.
Yay,
Yeah.
yay. Success. Oh, they got married. Yeah, that's a
Yeah. Yeah.
moment. We know it, right? You and I can literally brainstorm a TV ad right now.
For sure. For sure.
Let's go to birth, footsteps, your
Yeah.
first steps you took, the first steps. Then there's you getting into trouble riding your BMX. We always also go to BMX
Yeah.
moments. And you see, the movie you and I know.
Yes. Yes.
And so, but we were very like deliberate to not deliver a script that is known and to not play into insights that have been already over
Sure.
leveraged. And then for us was this dimension of a lot of households are women run households and even in households that have dual
Yeah.
genders, which is also no longer defined. There is no longer that him,
Thing.
her,
Yeah. Yeah.
or
Those. Yeah.
Mrs. Mr.
Those
Sometimes
traditional
there are people
gender
who are just
roles. Yeah.
partners for
Yeah.
life. All of that's out the window. All of it's out the window. But the reality is that women have more control and are desiring more control. But we are a couple of years, decades behind because of all of these norms and these ways of just have kind of created these stereotypes and holding us back in terms of societal behaviors. So she owns was to address that. And then the others, guys, let's be real. Success is a
Yeah.
journey and a process, requires discipline. And as Momentum, we're in the business of financial
Sure.
advice. We're not going to, the reason people lose their monies through scams, for example, is everybody's looking for a quick win.
Absolutely.
Everybody wants like, yeah, I'm going to buy Bitcoin. Let me take my 20,000. And actually, that's when most money is lost because people don't want to put in the work. So in the success is a
Yes.
science, and therefore there is a science of success. First
Yeah.
of all, is because we want to paint the whole picture, highs and lows. Failure, my God, failure is one common ingredient that very few brands talk about.
And they avoid it, right?
Why?
It's
Because we've
hugely
attached
avoided as well
shame.
because of
Yeah,
this idea of
yeah.
success looks this way. Therefore, failure is the opposite of that, and it's something that no one kind of wants to touch.
Yeah, and then when we listen to leaders from the West, they glorify, right, in tech. Yeah, fail multiple times, fail fast, fail
Yeah.
often.
Yeah.
The brilliance doesn't come without failing. And we all read those
Yeah.
books, we all listen to the podcasts. But when I report to you, Mongezi, and I'm like, hi, Buti, I failed. You're like, I am worried about your competence, Nontokozo. But then you are the same one who reposts, Stephen Bucklett's posts on like,
Yeah.
there is no winning without failure.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, this goes back as opposed to having those conversations as brands that society is having or being part of them, and reshaping those conversations. In one of our past conversations on the podcast, differentiation came up as one of the key aspects that make brands memorable, right? And within the financial services industry, there's a lot happening with challenger brands coming up quite a lot, and we'll talk a bit about them. But there's also this idea, this growing idea of the rise of customer experience, the rise of brand experience, and how these are being redefined. What trends do you think will continue to impact customer experience or just CX in general?
Yeah, sure. So let me just say, you know what? I love it when people are like, yeah, CX is a thing and da da da. And I mean, listen, when you go back even to the township, back to our villages, wherever we came from, they're like, hi, I'm going to Mongezi's braai. That guy knows how to throw a braai.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
CX.
Yeah.
I'm going to this car wash because they do this and do that. That's CX. I go to that festival and not because of this. Parking is always easy. I know how to exit. I can find my car. When my friends and I have had a little too much to drink, it's easy to find Uber.
Yeah.
So I think that some of these things are presented as new things, but they've always
Yeah.
been there.
Yeah.
They've always been there. If you go to a church and this hour slot, I like to go to the 9 o'clock service. Why? The parking is not full. The kids are looked after nicely. That's client
For sure.
experience. So for me, I think it's one just saying like we must constantly look to evolve our experiences because there's always a need to refine and sharpen and clean up. The other part is before we go for the fancy things, and I know AI and blah 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 blah. I mean, everybody's like, yeah. And frankly, even AI, I'm like, God, can we just stop? I know you are Roger Wilco. We won't stop. We've got to talk about AI. But for me, I even say in South Africa, just the most basic thing: don't misspell my
For
name.
sure.
That is
Yeah.
CX. When you write an email to me, don't call me Nontokoza.
Yeah.
Read, my name is on my email
For sure.
address. So I think like I'm passionate about. Sometimes I say to my team, don't tell me about the Verve champagne if the toilet paper is not in place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because as often as creatives, we're like, yeah, 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 there's this new cocktail. Yeah, 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 there's this other bottle of this. And I'm like, dude, who last checked the toilet? Because we have an event and the toilet must be
For
clean.
sure.
So it's that balance of the glossy and the new and the most
Yeah.
fundamental that must
Yeah.
be in place. In terms of these trends, I think one of the things that we talk about is just the keeping things simple. I think there is so much complexity, so much. One of my pet peeves is if I go to a hotel room and I can't figure out how the shower works. My God, I've gone to several, by the way, where I'm like, all I want hot and cold water.
Yes.
I want to be able to switch it up, switch it down in my
Yeah.
control. But now these taps, I've got to sometimes scan like
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
I've got to do like that, and then I can't tell which. I'm like, all I want is just to wash, just to
Yeah.
wash. So I think there is a thing even in insurance. We talk about just simplicity being the ultimate sexy
Absolutely.
simplicity.
Absolutely.
I think when we design competition mechanics, when we're doing our content plans, some of the things take 10 steps because Tina Umongezi must demonstrate that Yena is a strategist. He's done his job. I'm like, why are there 10 steps? So simplicity remains important. I think the other stuff is data privacy. Yo, there's a lot of conversation about
Yes,
data
yes. And,
privacy.
and and we're seeing that, and I think we are the more, and I think that's another side of CX in my view, right? Because as on the
Yeah.
consumer side, we want all of this convenience. We want the brand to understand us. We want the
Yeah.
brand to tick all of these boxes. But the other side of that is that we also
Yeah.
want to feel as though nobody is looking where they shouldn't to give me this convenience. How do we balance it?
Yeah. Yeah. Number for us in as insurance and financial services, your compliance is
Yeah.
everything. Our license to be in business requires us to respect one's privacy. We can't bypass that. I also think that for agencies, you must investigate what is feasible. You must investigate what is
Yeah.
ethical. Sometimes I find with agencies, you don't spend enough time interrogating. You need to have, if it means Mongezi must say to the marketing team they're supporting, can we talk to your head of
Sure.
compliance? Invest in talking to the head of
Sure.
compliance, because when it goes wrong, it can go wrong very
Mm-hmm.
badly.
Mm-hmm.
And when it goes wrong, the marketing team must deal with it and not Roger
Yeah.
Wilco.
Yeah.
And that is where, for me, that sometimes I've got to remind that you guys, I've got to remind you guys that I listen when it goes wrong. We as the marketing community are called to account. So I think for me, there's an importance of just spend time understanding what is
For sure.
permissible. If there is something that the campaign requires one to do, then figure out with your compliance team what the best way is. And then I think the third part is, for me, is everybody wants to feel safe. And sadly, brands and organizations aren't trusted. So until we dial up the value we bring, because it's the value aligned to what you need versus a value that is only serving us as brands, we will forever have to defend our
Yeah.
position.
Yeah.
So I think let's demonstrate that we are adding value to your life as a client, and it's value that's not only advancing our profitability, but it's value that's advancing your experience with our products, and it's value that's maximizing your gain from our
Yeah.
products.
Yeah. This episode is sponsored by the digitally led customer experience agency Roger Wilco. For all your customer experience, digital marketing, and web development needs, go to rogerwilco.co.za or rogerwilco.co.uk. You can also download the South African CX report and the Township CX report directly from their website, free of charge. Don't we all love something free every now and again, especially with insights, right? Now back to the show. I was just watching a conversation you had soon after COVID, where I think you and the team had your huddles, and you felt that momentum had lost its relevance rather in the marketplace. And now, 4 years later, we talk about Sean's her success. We talk about the science of success. I feel as though I see momentum in a lot of spaces. How do you and your team, as well as your partners, build that relevance when you had lost it as a brand that has always been around and known?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, it's been 6 years. This is my seventh year
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
role. Yeah, yo, when I took on the role, it was really, really, really a challenging time for marketing in the group. I was the first, and I am still the first appointed group CMO that sat in Group Exco. The organization got to a point that required that marketing got
Sure.
elevated and was really just in an executive level in terms of accountability and participation in driving a shift in the organization. And that came with its own set of expectations. The first thing we did was for me to, in the first 100 days, to just listen and absorb where the frustration was coming from, talking to different executives, the people below that executive layer, and just like gather insights, not my perspective, but what was really
Yeah.
going on. The second part was to then define jobs to be done. And one of the things that we needed to do was to elevate the marketing capability in our organization. The capability had to be elevated in two ways. One, by upskilling the team and the actual employees in my structure. And then two, or my colleagues in my structure. The two was to have the right agency ecosystem that would complement and supplement what we had, and what we didn't have, they would also bring. That was a very, very critical step for us. And then the third part was to have a broad process that was multifunctional, collaborative across the organization to redefine our strategy and go through insights that we had gotten at the
Yeah.
time in order to, because usually if you're going to drive change in an organization, especially from a place where marketing is not the primary
Yeah.
team, like in FMCG, life is so easy. God, executives who run marketing in FMCG have it so easy because they are, marketing is the center of
Yes.
our
Yeah. Yeah.
organization. In financial services, marketing ain't no center. Marketing is number
Mm.
7. So therefore, what it means that if marketing is to be brought closer, we are still not the
For
center,
sure.
brought
For sure.
closer to the heart of the organization. Marketing must understand what the business needs. And so we went through that
Mm.
process. We had to be bold. I mean, one of our values is that momentum shows up in a maverick
Sure.
way, and that is in the DNA of the organization. It's not something I made up. It was something that was in the history of
Sure.
momentum. That the founders were known as Maverick. The leaders that were involved after being, the business was established to a Maverick. So we had to embrace the Maverick energy, and then thirdly was to realize that insurance, in order to stand out, you've got to do all you can to not look like your
For
competitors.
sure.
But we had to do that in a way that was responsible, in a way that was not alienating, and in the way that was still grounded in financial services, or in financial
Yeah.
needs
Yeah.
rather. So those were the 3 things we did. I think we compete on creativity because we don't have budgets.
Sure.
I always laugh because every budget cycle in our organization, that my exco, my peers know that I get very like, take all the money, take it, we'll still succeed, take all of it. We don't give us 1,000 rand. I say to our
Mm.
FD, give us
Mm.
1,000 rand, we'll show
Yeah.
you. And obviously, that's me being ridiculous. I mean, but I guess dramatizing the point that we require of our agency partners, we require of Roger Wilco to realize that Momentum is a challenger brand that doesn't have exorbitant budgets, which we now call a positive
Yeah.
constraint, a positive
Sure.
limitation, because it sharpens our thinking. And it really just, yeah, I think we're just so surrounded by people who want to do amazing
Sure.
things.
Sure. There are a couple of things that I'd like to unpack a bit more there, and one of them I think, which is a really big one across the board beyond even insurance. This idea of being marketing led where marketing should lead, in those kinds of instances, because in some instances you see that this is not the case, and we could count the number of brands where that have trended, got close to being cancelled, and all of these things, and you could tell that it's because the kind of person who was supposed to be in that space wasn't, or they weren't listened to. So I'd like to really unpack that importance of being a marketing led organization where marketing should take the lead, firstly, right? And also this
Yeah.
idea of having the right kind of agency ecosystem around you, ecosystem of partners, because I know that this is something you spoke about as well at another conference, when you spoke about the underdog, or the village behind the underdog. And I think how important are these two levers, and how do you partner with your agency partners to ensure that it works? Because as agencies, sometimes as creative people, we see our little corner of the world that deals with momentum. Somebody else sees their little corner of the world that deals with the brand, but you see the big picture, and you have to kind of put these puzzle pieces together over 7 years, as you've just put it, right? So how do you create this? Like, how do you put these pieces together?
Yeah. So here's the thing. In financial services, I can almost hand on heart say banks and insurance, brand led, marketing led
Yeah.
organization. What's
Yeah.
that? For what? For what? We need product designers, we need actuaries, we need
Yeah.
accountants, we need engineers, we need data specialists, data scientists, and marketing. So so I always say to people who are transitioning industries, FMCG to financial services, that no one will say you lead, No one will say, here's a mic for you to speak. They will give you the mic when you demonstrate your value. They will give you the mic when you demonstrate that you first understand the business, then deploy a marketing strategy. So that's how I've done
Yeah.
it. I mean, you can imagine where there had never been a group CMO, where there was a head of brands and heads of brand and public relations, blah blah blah, stakeholder engagement. So to now sit, to the left with the FD, to the right with other CEOs, says actually my voice. I don't have to speak all the time,
Yeah.
but when I
Yeah.
do speak, best I say something that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of got it. And to this point, in my in how I think of myself and how I think of my role, it's constant work. It's every day. It's like you win in year one. It's not like they give you that on a silver platter. You have to win again in
Yeah.
year two. And in year three, you must also demonstrate you are still winning. You still won't be given a central role or a pivotal role because it actually is not in the industry.
Yes.
What I have got, what I have got is a respect and demonstration of value. Therefore, my participation is
Yeah.
welcomed and my participation contributes to the bigger
Right.
business and the broader business agenda. And that is great because if you don't deliver value, your participation will be switched
Yeah.
off. You will be left out. Your voice won't be invited. Your approach will be misunderstood. And when you've had meetings with 10 people 10 times and they still don't know what marketing is doing, it's not that they don't understand the English you've
Yeah.
communicated with. It's because they are fundamentally not seeing you deliver value to the business.
I get it.
And so then you've got to almost deprioritize what is selfishly important to marketing so that you can demonstrate value and bring what is
For
important to
sure. For
marketing.
sure.
You can't, yeah, because you could, it's like, again, let's go to family events that we know. You can't just say to your mom, there's going to be champagne on tap and blah, blah, blah. When your mom cares about food that is cooked well, that caters to your aunt who has high blood pressure, who doesn't want salty
Yeah.
food and
Yeah.
spicy
Yeah.
food. So you've got to first say, yes, oh, Auntie knows manbani will have the chicken. It won't be spicy. It won't be salty. And we will also have champagne.
Yes.
Then there's an appreciation of Umongezi is advancing a family
Yeah.
agenda. And that's what I've had to do. And so to your second question around agencies is I mean I overshare. So I make sure that you know my drama so that because you are all there to support marketing in the
Yeah.
drama.
Yeah. Sure.
So that's why we believe in inclusive agency involvement in coming to our events that are building culture and dialogue in the broader organization. I'm not selfish about relationships. You guys must have your own relationships in the business. But there are moments where I'm going to sit you down and say, listen, it has gone wrong that side. I need us to fix it and fix it quickly.
Sure.
And so that's that relationship because at the end of the day, we are in this contractual relationship so we can help each other
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And for you as agency partners to help me and my team out, you've got to understand what me and my team are dealing with, both negatively and
For sure.
positively.
For sure. There's this.
Yeah.
There's. I think there's also this thing of a lot of the time agencies tend to deal with brands that have had agencies and have had this ecosystem running for a long time. In very many ways, you had to build this ecosystem, and sometimes and I want to stress the fact that it has been 7 years of you building it, so it takes time, and sometimes brands want to see results now. And agencies as well kind of want to see results now from the agencies that they kind of partner with around the table. What were some of your, I suppose, point areas of where you knew that you were ticking the right boxes because you had to build it. And I think I want to get try to get behind the scenes in terms of the building blocks that you had to put in place to get the right digital agency, to get the right creative agency,
Yeah.
to get this and all of that to support the products that were being launched by the brand over time, while building on this insight that you had lost relevance as a brand.
Yeah, so I'm a very methodical
Sure.
thinker, and I kind of appreciate like structure. So we may listen, where I've interviewed people in my team where they've said, "What frameworks and tool do you have?" I said, "This one.
Yeah.
This one is your framework and tool. There you go."
Yeah. Pen and paper.
No jokes, by the way, no jokes. And I'm like, "Go ahead, let's create one.
Yeah.
Let's do
Yeah.
it."
Yeah.
So, so I think my thing was, like I said, my first 100 days, I listened
Yeah.
and I observed. One, we had capability to build capability. Capability means my team, we've got to change how we brief, for example. We've got to change how we review work because I've sat in several meetings and I'm listening to how we review work. We've got to change how we tell the business what we're doing. Okay, so I had to define my winning in ways that were short term, medium term, and long
For
term,
sure.
so that we don't have the, oh, but you must shift your brand health in the first year before we've shifted capability in the first year, or we've got to shift brand health in the first year before we have team routines between agencies and ourselves in the first year. So in the first year was this balance of teach and then build capability and then deliver results. Teach, build capability, deliver results. Give yourself space. If the result is not there, go back and fix it. If the business is not happy, hear them, go back and fix it. But create a sense that, I mean, I use the analogy of like literally we are in the first 15 minutes of a 90-minute game.
Sure.
So when you say that your execs understand soccer and rugby and cricket, and in general, they understand
Yeah.
that a game can change in an hour. However, have the patience to understand it's the first 5 minutes, it's the first 10 minutes, the team is still warming up, the coach is new, the medical team are new, the ground or the weather is different.
Sure.
So I think it's sharing the conditions. Like if you're going to go and compete in Switzerland in winter and you are an African team, you have to acclimatize to the
Yeah.
weather. And business understands that because that is life. However, they've got to now see progress on, okay, now I've had to have rhythms of reporting feedback, reporting progress, and also being transparent about challenges. But we created a methodical rhythm and we were very, 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 what's the word?
Sure.
Consistent. So our rhythm doesn't change every 6 months or doesn't change every year because part of it is for the business to also know that each generation ziyadlala ngo 8
Yeah.
o'clock.
Yeah.
You know, I don't even know if it's 8 o'clock these days or
Or,
half past 8.
or
It's there is
or
a
or whether we still have terrestrial
you know.
TV. Yeah.
Okay, I don't even know. Survivor is on at this hour,
Yeah.
or Netflix is releasing the next episode in 2 weeks'
Sure.
time, and we must wait for
For
2 weeks
sure.
for the next
For sure.
release. And so, people are looking for rhythm that they can understand. Otherwise, you are responding to the noise all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. There's this just lastly on this topic of relevance. A lot of the time, relevance. We mentioned a number of things that are really important that have become buzzwords like CX, like AI, like authenticity. Relevance falls in there as well, where it's seen as an outward facing, consumer facing thing that we have to be as brands. From what I'm hearing, you had to inculcate it internally. What does it take to rebuild and redefine relevance internally as a brand before you go out there or while doing it with the consumer?
Yeah, yeah. It takes a clean mirror.
Yeah.
mirror.
Yeah.
You put a mirror and you're like, yeah, guys, let's look at ourselves
Yes.
there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I mean, organizations can be inwardly focused, and everybody's baby is beautiful in their eyes, right? It's like, oh, and then you're like, yo, akasembi umntwana kaNontokozo, but to my eyes, I'm like, oh my God, it's my little Nunu. She's gorgeous.
Yeah.
So what I found is because I was external, I could put a mirror on some. I guys know the fashion out there is changed. This fashion of yours is no longer the
For sure.
one.
For sure.
People aren't dancing like this anymore. The music has changed, and for the right reasons. Where the organization was, that conversation hadn't happened in a long
Yeah.
time. Because for one, there's got to be an appreciation. If you are saying you are lacking relevance, you've got to first have the acknowledgement of, okay, I am lacking relevance.
Yes.
And these are the markers that are indicating that I'm truly lacking relevance. I remember when we did our brain health, we had, I mean, the research was still what it was then. People were describing momentum in a very negative way, from like not with the times, and a brand used by my grandfather, and not racially inclusive, and very stuck in its ways, and it was a hard pill to
Yeah.
swallow, but it was a necessary
For sure.
reflection we had to hear. And I think if some teams deny negative feedback, not us, they don't understand. No, but our pricing is not an issue. These clients, they want too
Yeah.
much,
Yeah.
and you want to maybe show up like, no, but we did our innovation. It can't not have worked. I mean, the point is it hasn't
Yes.
worked. So don't deny the negative truths that are landing on your
Yeah.
plate. And what we did was find a way to then surface those truths that are negative and are your reality to the broader organization in a language and in ways that the broader organization can
Yeah.
understand, so that they can then they can make space for the choices you are making as a consequence, because that change in perception and the gap between who is leading and who is not, it requires you to execute, like I keep on saying, over
Yeah. Yeah.
time. It's the first 10 minutes of a 90-minute
Sure.
game. It doesn't mean if you have a penalty and you lose something that you must now fire your coach, you must now fire your team. And you can see teams that make abrupt decisions,
Yes.
that they suffer in the end because they are now panicking. So we've had to put panic aside and really just stick to our formula that we believed would help. And then also create markers for when reflections would happen and feedback would be taken on in order to get everybody excited about the next phase of, the next 15 minutes of the
Yeah.
game. So for me, it is relevance. For one to work on being
Yeah.
relevant, one must hear the feedback that says, here is where your relevance is lost or
Or missing. Yeah.
reduced
Lacking kind of thing. Yeah. Yeah.
or missing. Yeah.
Yeah, I get that, and so now you have now you have all the information. You start building the relevance. You start rebuilding and redefining how the organization thinks, acts, and is received out there. How do you then foster a culture of creativity, innovation, and risk taking, which are also other things that then take you over the line or help to take you
Yeah.
over the line?
I think that is it has to do with I guess the personality of the leader as well.
Sure.
Um, I often say to my team, my middle name is experimentation. I remember having a conversation with one lady I found in the organization who's since left, and she said to me on like 2 weeks before I even officially started, I'm so bored. I want to be challenged. I've been in my role. I said, don't worry. Are you sure you want to be challenged? Are you sure? Because my middle name is
Yeah. Yeah.
experimentation and challenge. So I always, for me as a leader, is I look for
Sure.
bravery. I encourage bravery. Um, I I challenge us. Like I said, we compete on creativity. We're not competing on
Yeah.
budgets, because we don't have budgets. We're not going to have them. We don't have them. We've never had them. Um, and then the last part is to create an environment of psychological safety,
Yeah.
because where the team is going to be encouraged to take risk, to push the envelope, to do the unexpected. Sometimes I don't even know what the answer is myself. I'm like, guys, I know this is not quite cooked and I don't know what's going to taste like, but let's keep cooking. And I think in having psychological safety, it allows for a space to say when people are uncomfortable, when people are struggling. It creates a space for Mongezi to come up with a good idea, to elevate an idea that Nontokozo might have started. Or for Nontokozo to say to Mongezi, Mongezi, but yeah, bora this thing,
Yeah.
yako. Let's do it like
Yeah.
this. Because we've created a space where we can tell each other
For sure.
that, and we can challenge each other that way. Now, whether or not agencies do it among themselves is something I cannot necessarily influence, because sometimes I get frustrated when mediocre work is presented, and Roger Wilco, who knows that the thing is that momentum is maverick, or Roger Wilco just said, "I this is not digital performance
Yeah.
media. I'm gonna let the other people. This idea is so boring, but I'll say nothing." Now, that disappoints me because I expect better. And hence this analogy of a
For
village.
sure.
Because in a village, the uncle that sees Mongezi misbehaving and the aunt that sees Nontokozo throw away a can and make it and create litter on the road will speak. They won't say, "No, Nontokozo is not my child," because they take pride in their
Yeah.
street. They
Yeah.
would say, don't not like my paper, like take that to the
Yeah.
dustbin. So this idea of we have this brand ecosystem we must make work, and we are people who want to be known for doing brave
Yeah.
work, I think is something that one must never switch off
And I'm also,
if they are working in the momentum ecosystem or metropolitan ecosystem.
if you're enjoying The Lead Creative, please share this episode with your network and hit follow or subscribe. Enjoy the show. And I'm also getting this sense of open collaboration or openness in accepting ideas and that kind of safety, both from an internal team perspective as well as external partners who are helping the brand as well. In recent times, we've been seeing
Yeah.
a lot of, or quite a few, challenger brands making waves within the financial services industry, promising shiny offerings and kind of just changing the narrative, or at least creating a bit of a narrative. What does it take to be a brand that is as established over time as Momentum to think as a challenger brand and challenge what are seen to be newer challenger brands in your communication? Because at times you either see a new challenger brand kind of coming up and changing the status quo, and the brands that are seen to be more established players in that industry not doing the same or trying to catch up. What does it take to maintain your agility and challenger brand thinking when you are no longer a challenger brand in your industry?
Yeah. Oh God. Culture in the team and the organization. That's when brand personalities are
Yeah.
used, right? So, we talk about brands that are trying, but if it's not truly in their DNA, they never can do it. You can only fake it for so
For sure.
much. So for me, I think that it's one thing to have a cool idea. It's one thing to do a PR stunt. It's another to live it as a value every
Yeah.
day. And if it's a value, then it's got to be in your culture. It's got to be in your DNA. You've got to talk about it as a matter of being. I usually say to my team, whether you serve me a cappuccino or you serve me a seafood dish, I expect that you have thought about how you're going to present it. And I'm usually looking for what's the fun or what's the different or what's the quirky or what's the maverick. Because it's in my like
Yeah.
DNA and also in the DNA of the organization. And so don't deny. And sometimes I've got to say to people in our team, do you realize you are working for a maverick brand? Why is it okay that you give us something that could be done by the Department of All Trees and the Department of Water
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Oceans.
Yeah.
I mean, like, oh, why are you giving me work that could be done by a
Yeah.
matriculant? Why have we hired you, Roger Wilco? If we can take a bunch of kids, put them in the room, tell them the things we told you, and they're likely going to come up with the idea you got, what's the point? Then let's go and work with the high school
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Let's get them to solve our problems. So I think sometimes agencies have this like, yeah, we are the agency. No, you must bring superior thinking that demonstrates
Yeah.
value attached to your experience and your
Sure.
specialization. If your superior thinking does not demonstrate value that is attached to your experience and your specialization, we've got no reason to be in this
For sure.
relationship,
For sure. No, I get that. Yeah.
frankly
Yeah.
said.
I get that. Um, Ntokozo, we usually
Yeah.
ask our,
So I think
yeah.
it's yeah.
It's
Sorry.
that
No,
balance.
I was
Yeah.
saying it's just in the yeah, and I think it's in the thing, Mongezi, and I keep on going back to how society lives. Like I can't come to your family, Abagwamtati, and bring my family's things to your family. That's disrespectful and that's arrogant. And that is counterproductive. So, as an agency, you are going to come into different families and you must embrace the ways of that family.
Yeah.
That is just like a very
For
basic
sure. For
relation,
sure.
like an exchange in a
Yeah,
relationship.
and I
Yeah,
think part of
yeah.
that, and I think part of the, I guess, with the challenger brand thinking as well. I think just to bring that back, I think it's also just to have that in your DNA consistently, and have it sort of top of
Yeah,
mind as well. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah. You see, there are big brands. You can be a big brand with a challenger
yeah,
mindset.
absolutely.
You
Yeah.
see, because challenger as a mindset is even more
Yeah.
powerful.
So we usually ask our guests to leave a question for our next guest, and our last guest,
Really?
our last guest was Steve Babayako of Extreme Ideas, and the question he left for you was, considering the challenges. Okay, so let me start this over. Considering the challenges African passport
This
holders
feels like
face
Miss
in
Universe.
moving
This
across.
feels like Miss Universe questions.
I guarantee you it's going to be a much harder question. So Steve asks, because so they're based. I mean, they have offices in 6 different countries, but they built their agency from Nigeria, or at least their base started in Nigeria and they built from there. So the question is asking is that, considering the challenges experienced by Africans or African creatives in moving across the continent, especially as someone with, say, a West African passport, you find it difficult to move across the continent as a creative person, which then means the creative talent is limited, and doesn't travel across Africa. What would it take for us to improve that mobility for creative talent in order to improve growth in Africa and African brands?
Okay, I think the exchange has to be digital because in the digital world there are very little borders.
Yeah, yeah,
And what I've seen, I mean, right now in tech, you can outsource your services and deal with somebody in
yeah,
India. You can deal with somebody in China. You can have somebody in London. You know this thing of geographical boundary has been reduced by tech geography. I mean, in the tech world, there are no very few boundaries. Boundaries will now become about your intellectual
yeah.
property, your processing of the brand, your understanding of the creative challenge, etc. I think that there are multiple platforms that creatives from Africa should get on in order to have access to global work. That's what I would say.
So, same question to you, Nontokozo. What's the one question that you'd like to ask our next guest about their work, their creative process, and thoughts on the industry?
I have this question I love asking, and it's a very short question. And I love asking this just to provoke debate. And here's the question: is marketing ethical?
Is marketing ethical? Okay, interesting question.
That's it.
Interesting question. I'll ask our next guest if marketing is ethical.
And it's informed by, if you watch all crises, look at programs on Netflix like Rotten.
Yeah,
Have you watched Rotten?
I have. Yeah, I have.
Yeah. Okay. Is marketing ethical?
And now the last question.
Here's the question.
And now the last question to you, Nontokozo. If you could ask any living person about their unique take on marketing, approach to creativity, life, who would that person be, and what is the one question you would ask them?
Oh, I'm always like, I love it when I throw in celebrities into these conversations, because when we talk about brands, we don't think about celebrities. I would actually want to talk to Rihanna. I love her. I love her work. I love how she's built her brands and her businesses. She's failed a lot. And I would say to her, like, how does she balance her shaping culture through music and solving for social problems as an entrepreneur?
How does she shape culture through music and
Because I
social?
think as musicians, especially in the hip hop space, it's always like this flamboyance of life and recklessness and da 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 da. And when you are solving for inclusive makeup, that's a responsible job.
Yeah.
When you are solving for how women see themselves and their skins, and that's a serious job. And the impact and culture is slightly different. So there's almost this side and switching up. And sometimes we've got to be able to make those switches in how we do things. So I would actually have a conversation about that.
Fascinating question to an equally fascinating and amazing and inspiring person. Nontokozo, thank you so much for making the time. This was an amazing conversation. Appreciate all the insights, and we love the work that you're doing, and the waves that you're making in the industry. So thank you for making the time.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was fun. And I hope you've got content you can work with.
Absolutely. No, I've got a lot. I've got a lot. Thank you.
All right. Cool. Cheers. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you for listening to The Lead Creative. Did you get one insight that's worth sharing from this episode? Please share it with your network or your friends. Pop me some of your ideas and innovative finds on Twitter on @Mongezi. This podcast is available on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can also find me on mongezi.com.